This video is about representing portions and goes along with CPM for 6th grade, Chapter 3, Section 1, Lesson 4. In this lesson, we're looking at the weird relationship that we've kind of put into a modified triangle between word form, fractions, decimals, and percents. And this is just one way to structure your organization, where you look at fractions, decimals, and percents, and you're able to go from one to the next. It doesn't really matter where on each triangle or which corner of the triangle they are, just that you know that you can take your fraction, turn it into a decimal, and a decimal into a percent, and you can take all those and put them into different word forms. So let's look at one example. If we have 5/10 and 2/100, the first step that I suggest doing is converting it into a decimal, because that's going to be the easiest way to work with it. We know that we have 0 whole numbers, so we're going to start with our 0, and we're going to add our decimal. With 5/10, we can go straight and put the 5 in the 10ths place and 2 in the 100ths place. From there, we know that we have 52/100ths, just based upon how we say it, so we can write that as our fraction, 52 over 100. And we know, again, once we have our decimal version, which is 52/100ths, we just need to multiply that by 100, and once we do that, we can get our percent. So if we have 52/100ths, we multiply it by 100, we find out that we have 52. And many of you can do that in your head if you prefer to do it that way. And we know that we then have 52%. Try filling this one in on your own. I'm giving you the decimal. Please show me fraction, percent, and word form. So this is 72/100ths. So when I filled this out, I went straight from the decimal to the fraction and said 72/100ths. And then I went back and turned it into a percent and said 72%. And then I broke it down and said 7/10 and 2/100ths. Now I always get a lot of questions. Is this the only way to put it in word form? No, it's not. You could also say 72% or 72/100ths. That's your choice in this case. Now, this lesson also gets into decimals and adding them, which can be a little bit funny. But the idea that we're looking at is twofold, in that we want to make sure that if we're adding them using a standard vertical algorithm, that we line up the decimal places correctly. And what I'm suggesting to my students is to always fill in that gap. Because we know, and here's where the other part is, that if we take our 9/10 here and write that as a fraction, we have our 9/10. By adding the 0, what we're really doing is we're changing it to 90/100ths. And the way that we can do that is with a giant 1 that we talked about in a previous lesson, where we're using 10 over 10 to get our hundredths, and then we have our 91/100ths, which makes it a lot easier, and then we're not making some of the same mistakes that we would make before. And then we can just add straight down, where we have 100th and 0/100ths to give you 1, 2/10 and 9/10, which is going to give you 11/10. So we have 111/100ths, but most of the time we add in the decimal so that we just say 1 and 11/100ths. If it helps, another way you can look at it is you can do it as a fraction, where you have 21/100ths, and you're adding the 90/100ths, so that you get 111 over 100, and then you would simplify it to 1 and 11/100ths. Okay, I expect that you can do it in fraction and decimal, but usually we'll give you the choice of how you want to do it. So here's your choice, 37/100ths and 8/10. Please add it and show me whichever way you're more comfortable with. So I solved it two ways. I took my 8/10 here and changed it into 81/100ths, so then I can have the 81/100ths and add the 37/100ths to get 117/100ths, which is the same as a simplified 1 and 17/100ths, or you can add it using the vertical algorithm, again adding that 0 in as a placeholder and just adding straight down.